Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Namaqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Laurel Liefert, and I serve as the minister of this congregation. And I think and hope today will be a special service. I just got back yesterday from 2 months away on a sabbatical. And also yesterday was Claire Hammoor's first day as our ministerial intern. He'll be with Namaqua for 26 months. And so today we are all sitting together under our imaginary story tree, sharing stories. You know what Namaqua is. We are a congregation of open minds, loving hearts, helping hands, gutsy creativity, and feet that walk our talk. So I wonder if we have any visitors here today. And if so, would you put your name maybe in the chat box and let us know whether you'd like to find out more about the congregation, or I would be happy to meet with you. Today is a good service because we're going to go over the last 10 years and the 10 years before that, and then looking with the crystal ball into the future of this congregation. So we are still Zooming, and I want to thank Sarah Suriani, our faithful Zoomer. She has really been a tremendous help to us during this pandemic. And we did meet yesterday with the COVID team, and it looks like, probably the summer will continue to be Zooming or some park services, but fingers crossed that maybe by the fall we'll be able to be back, at least some of us, into our building again. And the service is being recorded. And so I want to give a very warm welcome to all of you seekers, you warm, wonderful, welcoming, justice-loving community of seekers. So good to be back. And so now Claire and I will begin our service with our chalice lighting. Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you.
Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not.
And so we light our chalice for those of us who care a lot, a whole awful lot. You and you and you and you and you and you and you. Truer than true, there's no one alive who is youer than you. And so come, let us worship together. And as always, we recite in unison with you all muted, but saying along with me our congregational affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church and service its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This month's theme for Soul Matters is story. And so we begin our opening song, and you're welcome to sing along, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. We are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith. Then our heart is in a holy place. Then our heart is in a holy place. Then our heart is in a holy place.
And now I introduce you to Claire, and Claire will read one of, I think, many of our favorite stories. So Claire, thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to share with you Where the Wild Things Are. Story and pictures by Maurice Sendak. Where the Wild Things Are. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another. His mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, I'll eat you up. So he was sent to bed without eating anything. That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew. And grew. And grew until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through the night and day. And in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, and I'll invite you to do this with me, they roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. Till Max said, be still, and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all. And made him king of all the wild things. And now, cried Max, let the wild rumpus start. Now stop, Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then around from far away, across the world, he smelled good things to eat. Can you just take a moment to close your eyes and take in a big breath? And with that breath, smell something that you love to eat. Something that reminds you of home, something that makes you feel warm, something that makes you feel cared for. And when you're ready, you can let your eyes flutter back open. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye, and sailed back over a year, and in and out of weeks and through a day, and into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him. And it was still hot.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Maurice Sendak. Every Sunday, and this is a tradition that I inherited when I came here, we share our joys and sorrows. And because we were meeting in high school and other places where you couldn't light a candle, the tradition that evolved at Namaqua and that we decided to keep is, instead of lighting candles for each joy and sorrow, that we transfer a glass pebble from one bowl into the next. And today I want to begin with William Blake said that joy and woe are woven fine. And so I have something that arose from a sorrow, but that now has converted into a joy. The sorrow is that we lost one of our beloved members, Glenda Bell, recently, who died. And we held a celebration of life and remembrance of her, and we surely will remember her. But she also remembered us by designating us as the beneficiary of her lifetime of savings, which is $95,000. So that is a huge joy for a congregation like us. I know when I first came, our budget was in the 80,000s. And now we just finished our pledge drive. I hope we'll be able to reach our goal of 150,000. This is separate from that, but thank you so much, Glenda Bell. We loved her dearly, and clearly she also loved us. And so for those of you who would like to now have me transfer a pebble representing your joys or sorrows, could you please put your name in the chat box and I'll call on you. And then you can unmute and speak. So Nancy Amsler, do you want us to speak, Nancy, or should I announce the good news that Nancy will celebrate a milestone birthday on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. And Tracy Jones, would you like to unmute and share a joy or sorrow with us?
As some of you may remember, I had to go to Boston for a medical procedure. My trachea, I have a disease, my trachea keeps collapsing. And so I had to go to Boston for a trial to see if they can do a surgery. Well, the trial was successful, so I will be going back to Boston the first week of June for the surgery. So there's hope there's light at the end of the tunnel that maybe they can fix my trachea.
Well, I sure hope they can, and I'm so glad that your trip was successful, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the other side of your surgery.
Thank you.
So I'll also put your name on my altar, Tracy.
Thank you.
And Vicki Clark, unmute.
Tom and I are the proud great grandparents of Mackenzie Joe. Our oldest granddaughter and her husband gave birth on April 28th.
Oh,
We're
that's
excited.
great grandchild. Wow, congratulations, Vicki and Tom. Talk about legacies and talk about trees. You got quite a family tree going there. All right, and Norma.
I don't see Meg and Paul here today, but I think the reason is because they're doing a major celebration for Paul's 80th birthday, which was last Thursday. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Yes. So happy birthday to Paul. That's a big birthday, and I know he's had a hard year coming up to it. So I celebrate with him, and thanks, Norma. And Rini Poole.
Hi, this weekend, the past few days, actually is our first anniversary of having lived here at Good Samaritan. Although it's been a difficult year with COVID, this has been the best place we could be, and I'm so glad we made that decision to move here when we did. The community is opening up. We're making new friends. We're becoming involved with the community, and it's just nice to be here. And that's a celebration for us because it's hard to make that decision.
It is.
And it's hard to move when you're in your 80s or close to your 80s, but we've survived and it's going well.
That's great. Well, congratulations to you, Rini, and to John.
Laurel?
Francie? Oh, okay.
Laurel, Kathy Kipp is watching the service with us because she doesn't get it at her house. So
I wanted to thank them for inviting me. Doug found out how minimal my internet service is the other day, and right after that, Jerry invited me to share the service here at their home. So I am delighted to be part of it today.
It's great to see you, Kathy. And thanks, Cherry and Leonard, for inviting her. And Francie Liefert.
First of all, I want to say that Bev Cardarelli is joining me here for the service, and she doesn't have her own computer, so she is amazed how many people she can see. And the other thing I want to do is ask for your prayers for Laurel and my friend Martha Henderson, who recently had open heart surgery and is on the mend, but it's very slow going, and she has spent longer in the ICU than she had anticipated, and including during her younger son's birthday. So please light a candle or think good thoughts for Martha.
Yeah, and I was so touched when she specifically asked Francie and me to ask for your prayers and your thoughts. And Cindy Black.
Well, as many of you know, I'm in AA. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And my sponsor passed away on April 10th. And she was quite a mentor to me. And we had her memorial yesterday. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I got to help with it. And yeah, that's a sorrow, a big sorrow. And left a big hole in my heart.
Yeah, that is a big loss. I'm so sorry, Cindy. And Kathy Hartman.
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico this morning, where I'm staying with my mother-in-law, Bev, and I've been visiting with my deceased husband's family. And we went up to Sandia Peak on the other day, whatever day it was, and scattered my husband's ashes, finally. And it was a really, really beautiful day and a beautiful thing. So
I'm glad you could be with us today, Kathy. And where's that Nathan boy of yours?
he's still sleeping.
Oh, okay.
He said he was going to join me, but maybe later.
All right. Thanks, Kathy. And Mim?
I just want people to focus some thoughts for Brenda and Wade Christensen. I'm not sure how Wade's mom is doing now, but she was in the hospital yesterday.
Mm.
And Brenda, God bless her, she's been dealing with COVID ramifications for more than a year. So I love those people, and I want you to absolutely send good thoughts to both of them and their amazing son, Aidan.
So I'll put a few in for the Christiansens, and we'll get to see that amazing son, Aidan, later in the service. Yeah, I'm sorry about Wade's mom. And Barbara Fleming, who we also will see later in the service, reports that she's doing better, that she's been slowly recovering from being hospitalized, whereas I think those of us who've been in a hospital know one does not sleep. And now she's as good as she's going to be, getting on with life. Good for you, Barbara. Indomitable. And Doug Stewart says that he always knew Vicki and Tom were great. So they're great grandparents now, and also great even before then. And then Dick and Carol Barton joining us from the land of ninja vote counters. Oh, well, welcome back, and thank you, Dick and Carol. I don't really know what the land of ninja vote counters is, but come home to us safely. And Pete Buckmeyer.
Just a little bit of neighborhood news around the church there. Wendy's husband, Wendy is our caretaker for the lawn and snow removal. He's recovering from colon cancer and seems to be doing okay. And then Joe, our next door neighbor there to the west of the church, died here last week of cancer. And I promised to let everybody know and to keep him in our prayers.
Thank you, Pete. So you may know that Wendy's last name is Darling. And when she first met Pete, you can imagine. Your last name isn't Pan, but it was still kind of a nice coincidence. Well, thanks for keeping us up on the neighborhood. And ninja vote counters are the people from a private company who are, again, oh my God, recounting the presidential votes in Arizona. Good Lord. Oh, so Donna Brown has two new friends, Tig and Karen. So let's put in a couple for the new friendships. Thanks for letting us know. And I think I don't have any more indication in the chat room that someone wants to share. Does anyone see hands raised that I'm not seeing? So as always, I'll put in another handful of pebbles to represent the joys and sorrows of those of you who are here and those who are not, who are part of our community and who may have something too tender to speak out loud. And I actually didn't light the candles as usual, but we can imagine that there's also a candle lit for the joys outside our walls, our virtual walls, and the sorrows. We live in a beautiful world, but there is suffering, and that's one of the reasons why it's so good to be together. Thank you. And we'll end with you repeating after me. In our joy and in our sorrow, we are not alone. Thank you. So now sit back and get ready to hear a little bit of history. So Namaqua was founded in the year 2000. And so the first 10 years, when I wasn't here, I've asked Barbara Fleming, as one of the charter members, to share, and she is a historian, to share the history, but it's only like 4 minutes, so you'll know that there's much that's left unsaid. But for today, Barbara, thank you for being here. And if you want to unmute, and people, you can put your on speaker view and take it away.
By the mid-1990s, Foothills Unitarian Church was bursting at the seams. Even with 2 Sunday services, overflow into the social hall was common. Members met to discuss the situation, considering 2 solutions: sponsor another church in Fort Collins or start a church in Loveland. Since enough members lived in Loveland to justify the latter, they made the decision to expand southward. Marcia Lewis and Kent Robertson went to Boston, headquarters of the Unitarian Universalist Association, for guidance on starting a new congregation. Upon their return, the Foothills Board went into action. By 1999, with support from Foothills member Gretchen Snowden and a small committee, a congregation was gathering monthly in Loveland, meeting at first in mountain and city parks. When outdoor services were no longer feasible, they met for a time at the Pulliam building, then relocated to a local high school. They affiliated with the UUA in 2000, choosing the name Namaqua because a favorite meeting place had been Namaqua Park in Loveland. Services were lay-led with occasional guest sermons by retired Reverend Roy Jones and some other area ministers. From the beginning, the new congregation held religious education classes with robust participation and sufficient volunteer help. Jennifer Buckmeyer was among those who helped with RE. Not all UU churches had incorporated joys and sorrows into their services at that time, but NUUC included that from the beginning. Founding members of NUUC include Pete and Jennifer Buckmeyer, Tom and Barbara Fleming, Allison Day, Elaine Axon, Dick and Carol Barton, Kent Robertson, Ginny Weigel, Lenny Boren, Carol Radcliffe Koch, John and Marcia Lewis, Mary Magruder, Jean Bolton, and Don and Shirley Rawson. Tom Fleming, Ginny Weigel, and Jean Bolton are deceased, and several of the 40 charter members have moved away or are no longer active. Though Gretchen remained a member of Foothills, she continued to help organize and encourage NUUC. Foothills paid annual stipends for 5 years, $10,000 the first year and $5,000 in subsequent years. This amount helped pay for guest ministers, space rental, hymnals, and other supplies and RE materials. All the work in the early years was done by volunteers. Within the first 10 years after affiliation, NUUC got an interim minister, the Reverend Todd Strickland, who stayed for 3 years. Over to you, Laurel.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you to all of you charter members who started this congregation, that I know I'm not alone in giving great thanks for what is a home, a spiritual home that I love. Well, in the 10 years since I've been Namaqua's minister, we continued many of the traditions that started in the first 10 years. One of them is the half plate ministry, where we give half of our Sunday collection away to a local nonprofit that embodies our values. And so after the reflections, we'll have our half plate ministry recipient. This time it's the Loveland Youth Gardeners. Another service that I love that's part of a tradition is the Decades service that's held early in January, where we have people of different decades answer the question in Mary Oliver's poem, "What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Also the summer services that are held outside at parks, Day of the Dead around Halloween to remember our ancestors, winter solstice, attaching our wishes for the coming year to a wreath and then having a potluck and burning the wreath in a big bonfire. There's the auction coming up probably in June, the chili cook-off, fabulous potlucks. One of the things is the pastoral care team that we all inherited has always been one of Namaqua's strengths, is caring for one another. There's a sense of family that I think was easier to have when the congregation was smaller, but even as we have grown, I think that is one of our 5-star attributes, is having an incredibly genuinely caring pastoral care team that coordinates meals and rides and lets people know that when they're part of this community, you're not alone, someone has your back, and will pay attention to what's going on in your life and support you as needed. Another thing about that is that some congregations, as they grow, has kind of a culture of insiders and outsiders. But I think another characteristic of Namaqua is that the congregation is truly welcoming to new members and friends and visitors. And so once you become part of this community, you are part of the extended family that is Namaqua, even though we've grown to being what's called in church lingo a pastoral size congregation. So I think that we do a good job walking our talk, that all are welcome, all are worthy. You know, the congregation embodies the theological diversity, the pluralism that is one of the attributes of Unitarian Universalism that I think in some ways makes us a faith for now and the future as our country becomes more pluralistic and multicultural. So in our congregation, when I look out at you in the pews and when I talk to you about your beliefs, what I know is that we have Unitarian Universalist atheists and agnostics, humanists, mystics, pagans, Buddhists, such a theological diversity. And I think one of the things is that since many people were not born and raised Unitarian Universalist, they may have come from another faith tradition that they no longer believe in. So one of the things that we've done in our congregation is help people understand not only what they don't believe, but what they do believe. And so we've offered opportunities both in adult enrichment, but also in the children and youth religious education to do things like explore other faiths, to develop a meaningful spiritual practice, and to reflect on the important questions of existence and live into the answers together. So what do you believe about the ultimate mystery, which some people call God? And what do you think about human nature? Are humans born sinful and inherently bad? Or there's a spectrum between evil and good? Is it somewhere in between? Are we born with a purpose in our life? So those are the kind of questions that we can take in our journeys together with our trustworthy companions. The pastoral care team did offer a class, we call it the death class, but it's about facing death with life. And we wanted to do it again this year, but because of COVID, it wasn't really the kind of class you could do virtually. And so in the fall, we'll be offering that again. We've also had adult enrichment classes on things like ethics and transitions and UU historical figures and transcendentalism and happiness. And there's an ongoing meditation class and reading and discussion groups about white privilege and anti-racism. I think if you know anything about me, it's that I have a bone deep commitment to shared ministry. And I don't know if it's my influence or what as the minister your last 10 years, but we have evolved to where we have a very horizontal structure of leadership and power dynamics. And so instead of having some kind of hierarchical organization, we are collaborating, and there's a lot of cross-pollination and communication between the elected leader groups and between all of the various ministries. And it is the congregation and the mission that own the congregation. It's not me as the minister or our leaders that are elected by you, the congregation, but we are here to help build the world that we dream about. And so since what each of us knows about God is a piece of the truth. One of the first things I did when I came here back in 2011 is start a worship associate program. So we now have a group of 10 worship associates that have their own voice and their own experiences and stories that they share with the congregation in services. And I want to thank you, worship associates, for carrying on for the 2 months that I was gone. I hear that we didn't even miss a beat. So thank you so much for spending the time and energy it takes to create meaningful Sunday services. And you know what we've evolved to is there's a kind of a liturgical rhythm to our year. So we have adopted the monthly themes from Soul Matters sharing circles, which hundreds of UU congregations in this country do. So this month we're starting the theme of story. But as I mentioned, we usually have, or we always have, a decade service in January. We have the summer park services. In September, when we come back together after the summer, we have our water communion. Day of the Dead in October, the winter solstice that I mentioned, our Christmas Eve services, both for families and for a quieter contemplative one for adults. Something significant is that a number of years ago, we did the work to be designated by the Unitarian Universalist Association as what's called a welcoming congregation. Welcome to LGBTQ plus people. And we are continuing that work. We've had a couple of what's called Stonewall Seders, the story of liberation of LGBTQ people based on the Passover Seder. We have our Pride Days in June, our Coming Out Day in October, Transgender Day of Remembrance in November. And so this is an ongoing commitment that we as a congregation have, again, to walk our talk and be fully inclusive. All are worthy, all are welcome, our first principle. You know, we have grown in numbers. I think the latest figure is we are up to 136 members. You know, some have moved away and we've had some deaths. But in the last couple of months, we've had 13 new members, although they haven't officially signed the membership book yet, but we'll have an in-gathering ceremony and officially welcome them once we're back in our sanctuary. But I think much more important with numbers are some of the concrete signs of growth and maturity. So we now have staff. I don't know how many of you know that when I started back in 2011, I was called as a 3/4 time minister. And then the next year we had enough money that I could go up to 5/6. And then the next year, 11/12. And then finally, the following year, I became Namaqua's first full-time minister. And I'm also the first minister to live in Loveland. The first minister was Alicia Ford, who lived in Longmont, and then Todd Strickland, as Barbara Fleming mentioned, who lived in Denver. But I think it was super important for the search committee that was looking for the next minister that the minister live locally. And so I jumped right in, and Dick Barton helped me get into the Rotary Club, and we worked on painting the town and also the MLK Events Committee. For a number of years, I was a police chaplain. I'm part of a multi-faith clergy group that includes Catholic priests and rabbis and many Protestant ministers. And also Together Colorado is a statewide community organizing group that both Doug Stewart and I have been super involved in. And we now are involved with 5 other congregations in Loveland with issues of homelessness. So those are really important, I think, milestones for us as a community, that we're not only good at taking care of one another, looking inward, but our justice ministry and our connections with the outer community have been strengthened. We also have Janan Wright now as our half-time director of religious education. When I first came, we had a quarter-time DRE. And even though we do still count on the energy and skills and commitment of the many, many volunteers that keep the wheels turning, we now have Margot as our administrator, and she works 10 hours a week. And so that is a blessing as well. And then, ta-da, a really huge milestone was that we, after being nomads wandering around the town and holding our Sunday services, a church in the box, we now have our own home. So it was in 2015 when we were 15 years old, the congregation 15 years old, that we bought our current building on 5th and Pierce. And as I mentioned, we will be back there one of these months. And so we've put down roots in Loveland. I picture our building with our bell tower radiating love, peace, and justice in the town and our community. One of the things that I often think about is that there were those who didn't want that particular building, thinking it was too small. But when we had the congregational vote and the majority, the requisite number voted to buy it, those people didn't take their marbles and leave. These are people who are still part of our community. And I consider that a sign of maturity and also an embodiment of Francis David's famous phrase that we don't have to think alike to love alike. And then there is a lot of love flowing in this congregation and a lot of music. And so one of the things that has truly blossomed, I think, over the last 10 years, even without a music director, is our music. We've had volunteer choir directors, so we've actually had a choir that could sing, and also a lot of homegrown music. I think all of us are looking forward to having our house band Tim Bob play for us again. Janet Gillette is a gifted vocalist. We've got pianists. We've got just an amazing group of musicians. And one of the really fun things that we'll reinstate again is our open mic night. So one Friday per month, we'll gather in the sanctuary and play music together and recite poetry. I'll end with one of my very favorite things that I think is unique about being part of a congregation, a community like this, is that it's multi-generational. And so we are building relationships among people of different generations. And one of my very favorite services in the 10 years I've been here was a youth-led service where we had youth reflect on profound, complicated issues like gun control and diversity. We had a hilarious version of Stone Soup where the kids were all behind a screen and Kathy Vaughn choreographed the throwing of things into the pot. So the kids were tossing over potatoes and carrots and onions, and some of them were not landing in the pot and were landing in the laps of people in the pews. And I think my favorite moment was actually at the end when one of our young high school students, Leonard Scalisi, was up in the balcony with his ukulele. And then Kylan Zdenek, Von Zdenek's granddaughter, was on the chancel with her guitar. And the two of them were singing together, "Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you." And I think there were many of us, including me, that brought tears to our eyes. So our young people are our future. And so I would like to now have, following me, Barbara with the first 10 years, me with the second 10 years, I now call on two of our youth, Aidan Christiansen and Taylor Trull, to talk about what they've appreciated growing up in this community and maybe some ideas or qualities that they look for in moving forward.
Okay, hi, my name is Aidan, and as a member of Namaqua for 8 years, I have learned a lot of things. I learned about many religions, and I actually have gone to visit a few places of worship. I attended OWL class, and I'm glad I was able to learn from trusted adults. I loved the Mystery Friends program when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I actually got to be a mystery friend once. At Namaqua, I've always liked having friends of many different generations. In the future, I want to keep that close-knit community we have. It would be good, however, to see more outside space to play in, more books, maybe a slide from the balcony to the pews. That'd be fairly entertaining. I definitely want more of the fun youth activities that Janet always plans, like the movie nights and holiday get-togethers. It would be cool to see a church youth band. I have you covered on drums. I'm really grateful I got to grow up in a loving community like Namaqua.
Thank you, Aidan, and we're glad too.
Hello, I'm Taylor. My favorite memory from church was dancing with my mom in the aisles. I felt so loved and cherished. It was just amazing. For the future of NUUC, I would love if we had more music opportunities, like Aidan said, and places to hang out outside of church, like Aidan said. Thank you for always making me feel safe and loved. And I'm really, really happy that I got to grow up in a community like this and just know all the love and support that you can give me.
All right. Well, thank you, Taylor. So I really do think that love is the spirit of this church. We got something good going on here. So thanks, Aidan and Taylor. And I hope you'll be like my son, Francis, and my son, Marcus, who I don't know if you want to become a UU minister, but I hope you stick with the UU community wherever you go. So now is the time for our offering. We, as I mentioned, split our plate with a local organization that embodies our values. Loveland Youth Gardeners has been one of our organizations that we have donated to in the past. They are a wonderful organization that empowers youth facing challenges, helps them build life and work skills. And Aidan Christiansen, who just spoke, is going to be part of that program this summer. And so participants like Aidan will grow their own gardens and are taught a gardening curriculum that emphasizes sustainable horticultural practices. And so if Sarah, you'll have the donate button in the chat, and we'll listen to a song by Marion Williams written by Bob Dylan, I Shall Be Released.
They say that everything can be replaced. They say that every distance is not near. But I can remember everything. On the face of the people who put me there. I see my light come shine from the west on down to the east. But any day now, any day now, any day I shall be released. They say that everybody needs protection. They also say that everybody got to fall. But wait, I believe I can see my reflection somewhere so high above the wall. I see
Please join me in blessing our offering. We dedicate ourselves, and these are our offering, to the vision of this congregation, which is to radiate love, peace, and justice, as together we work to build beloved community. Thank you for your generosity. And now let's all just stretch and take a deep breath and get ready to get to know Claire a little bit more. So I am so thrilled beyond words to welcome you, Claire, to fall in love with this community, and I hope and expect that they will fall in love with you as I have.
Thank you so much, Laurel. Thank you all for your warm, welcoming presence, for everyone that I've got to meet and everyone I get to see each week on here, and I'm really looking forward to time together. First impressions are fraught with potential. What are we looking for? How are we feeling? Where might this go? Who should decide? For me to you, and you to me, I'm looking for a community that loves best of all. But what are you looking for from me? Before you answer, I want to share a story that encapsulates a little part of me, just a moment in time, an impression in my heart. In thinking about which story to share this morning, I kept reflecting on a philosopher that I love called Timothy Morton. And he writes about our world as one which holds things that exist in a profoundly withdrawn way. They cannot be splayed open, totally grasped by anything whatsoever, including themselves. For Morton, life is an effervescent journey towards knowing and being. It's a horizon we can all seek together. And yet, no matter how hard we try, we won't ever quite know it all. There is a way to take Morton's thinking as nihilistic, but I think there is a delightfully wonderful way to see his provocation as a quest which aligns with my you-ness. What each of us knows about God is a piece of the truth. And I don't think it's just what we know about God. I think it's what we all know about each of us, what we all know about this incredible world around and inside us. What each of us knows about each of those things is a piece of the truth. And this morning, I want to share a tiny piece of my truth with you. In our opening song this morning, Joyce Poley challenged me, when we tell our story from deep inside and we listen with a loving mind and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. Today, I'm hoping to put my heart in a holy place by sharing a part of the worlds that worlded me. I hope to bring you into the wild rumpus of the journey that I'm on and the endlessly deep love I have for this one wild and precious life. And now, cried Max, let the wild rumpus start. As I rode the train north from Grand Central in New York City, a cloudy sunset turned into darkness. Tiny snowflakes rushed by the window as we drew closer to my stop. I scrunched inside my coat on the platform and grabbed a cab. Bedford Hills Correctional Facility appeared on the horizon a few minutes later. I stepped out of the cab and took in the sharp wire and cold lights and empty processing trailer through the snow. It was my first time arriving here alone. It was my first time going to a prison alone. Was everyone here alone? I pulled a quarter out of my pocket, one of the few things I had carefully packed for the day, and dropped it into a locker slot. Clink. In went my phone and wallet and keys, and I closed the little door, pulled out the key, and went to processing. On the other side of the metal detectors and arsenal stood a tall, white officer, a man who didn't offer his name or even a hello. In New York prisons, civilians have to be escorted everywhere that they go, through the facility or just down the hallway to go to the bathroom. It doesn't matter. My escort looked me up and down, turned around a jangle of keys. I jumped to keep up. We scurried through the yard, me scrunched still inside my coat and him open to the snow in a short sleeve uniform shirt. He turned to me about halfway down the path and said, "Why are you wasting your time here?" What are you looking for? He asked, and I will never forget that moment because I froze. Literally, I wasn't prepared for this first impression. His walk slowed as his words built with more colorful language than I'll share with you this morning. Do you know what most of these women are here for? Do you have any idea what they've done to their children? Little kids in ovens because they wouldn't stop screaming, babies in drawers, sick people, and you're here for what? You think you're going to help them? We arrived at the next checkpoint, this one inside a building where I would be teaching theater, of all things. My escort handed me off to another officer before I could even think about responding. Later that night, I would hear stories from 16 women who live in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison. With little prompting, one woman shared that just a few weeks earlier, she had given birth to twins while chained to a gurney in a county jail. One of her children died in her arms that day. A tiny little girl, Jacinta Rain. Her son was at home with her wife the first night of our class, and everything came so quickly to the surface in that prison room on that cold night. Those first impressions are still resonating in my heart. When the woman who shared the trauma of losing her infant came home from prison, she asked me to lead a funeral for her baby girl. I often recall the feeling of setting that pristine miniature box of ashes into the earth, the magnitude of a single life honored by being laid to rest. Any day now, I shall be released. That cold night was 10 years ago, and I have been collaborating and creating and playing and praying with people who are incarcerated ever since. I know many of the moments that make me feel the most alive happen inside. They happen in community. They happen in sacred spaces made of magic and open to play and wonder. And I want them all to happen with you too. Now stop, Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, king of the wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Max's journey is an escape. He was released into the wild wonder of his imagination, and his return is a grounding of his body to a place of peace and love. It's not a literal escape or a practical place, it's a shift in his way of being in the world. That's what makes his story so tantalizing to me. Holding that funeral for an infant shifted my way of being in the world. In a way, we were able to release that little light into the universe. I believe I can see my reflection somewhere so high above the wall. In other ways, we were creating a space where that little girl, Jacinta Rain, was loved best of all. My journey to finding a place where I am loved is what brings me to you today. My hope for doing the work of love and justice in the world puts me right here in front of you. I'm here to find ways of loving with you, each and every one of you best of all. In a morning centered on the history and stories of Namaqua, it's delightful to feel like a little sprout on this congregation's storytelling tree. Today is a first impression that I want to transform into an invitation. Today is the beginning of our journey together, under, around, and within Namaqua's story tree. I've started by sharing a teeny, tiny piece of my story. And now I want to invite you to tell me a story from deep inside. I'll listen with a loving mind, because today is ultimately a day to sing a song. Let the world sing along. Sing of love that could be. Sing for you and for me. Our closing song today is a song that was written specifically for Sesame Street, and is a song that I grew up loving. And it's a song that told me it was okay to be me, however I needed to show up, and it was okay to offer whatever I had. And this is also the song that my mom and I danced to at my wedding. So I'm excited to share it with you.
Hey, you guys feel like singing a song?
I like to sing.
Dave, you too? Alex?
Even if you don't know this one, you can go la la, right?
Hey, I think you can probably sing along this one too, because I know you know it. Sing, sing a song.
Sing a song.
Sing out loud.
Sing out
That's good. Sing out strong.
Sing out
strong. Sing of good things, not bad. Sing of happy, not sad.
Not sad.
Sing, sing a song.
Sing a song.
Make it simple to last your whole life long. Don't worry that it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Sing, sing a song. La la la, everybody. La 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 la. Twice as loud. La 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 la. Hey, that's terrific. Why don't you do it, Luis?
Canta, canta una canción. Canta en voz alta, canta fuerte, canta de cosas buenas, no malas. Canta alegre, no triste.
That's nice.
Canta, canta una canción.
La 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 la.
Hazla sencilla, que te dure toda la vida. No te preocupes que no se oiga bien, para que otros la oigan. Canta, canta una canción.
All the la la. La 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 la.
La, 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 la. To words to extinguish our chalice. I see my light come shining.
From the west unto the east.
Any day now.
Any day now.
I shall be released. And more from Dr. Seuss for the benediction. Today was good. Today was fun.
Tomorrow's another one.
You're off to great places. Today is your day.
Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way.
But before you get on your way, let's just stay for one announcement and then for our virtual coffee hour when Claire and I will be circulating to the different rooms. So next week on May 9th, Mother's Day, it will be Worship Associate Claire Escalier and I who will be talking about the dance of fate and freedom. So I hope to see you all again next Sunday. And so our coffee hour, I want to thank Sarah Suriani again. And let me just say how wonderful it is to see you. And I'm so pleased to have Claire with us. So Claire, thank you so much for today. And as I say, both Claire and I will be circulating in our virtual coffee hour.